Frost and Fortitude Harrison Blackwood straightened his custom Brioni tie as the elevator ascended to the 47th floor. The mirrored walls reflected a man whose appearance was as meticulously calculated as his business strategies. Not a silver hair out of place, eyes sharp as steel, expression unreadable. At 42, he had built Blackwood Capital into one of Wall Street's most feared investment firms through sheer determination and an uncanny ability to divorce emotion from decision. "Morning, Mr. Blackwood," his assistant Olivia said, falling into step beside him as he exited the elevator. She matched his brisk pace, tablet in hand. "The Meridian Acquisition team is waiting in Conference Room A. Legal says they're still pushing back on Sections 3 and 7. Harrison didn't break stride. "Tell them non-negotiable. If they're not signed by noon, we walk and announce to their shareholders why." He took the coffee she offered. Black. No sugar. The same order for 15 years. And the Charity Foundation called again about the spring gala. Decline. "Send the usual donation, double it if necessary, but no attendance." Olivia cleared her throat. "Actually, sir, your presence was specifically requested by the board chairman. Mr. Harrington mentioned your father's legacy with the foundation." Harrison stopped walking. The mention of his father, gone 5 years now, was the only leverage anyone had over him anymore. "Fine, 2 hours maximum." As Harrison navigated through his day of acquisitions, terminations, and strategic maneuvers across town in a modest apartment in Brooklyn, Nora Winters was having a very different morning. "Theo! You're going to be late again," Nora called, pouring cereal for her 12-year-old brother while simultaneously trying to arrange sheet music into her bag. At 28, she had been raising Theo alone since their grandmother passed 3 years ago, leaving them with little more than cherished memories and mounting debts. "I can't find my science project notes." Theo's voice came from under his bed where he was searching frantically. "Check the piano bench. You were working there yesterday." Nora glanced at her phone, wincing at 3 missed calls from the restaurant manager. Her day job as a server barely covered rent, but it offered flexibility for auditions and evening performances at the Blue Note, a jazz club where she sang 3 nights a week. "Found them." Theo emerged triumphant, his dark curls, so much like their mother's, falling across his forehead. "Are you singing tonight?" "Yes, and Mrs. Patterson will come stay with you. There's a special event. Some fundraiser group booked the whole club." Nora kissed his forehead. "Now move it, kiddo. Education first, then stardom." After dropping Theo at school, Nora rushed to her shift at Salvatore's, where the manager greeted her with a scowl. "Third time this month, Winters." "I'm sorry, Marcus." "Theo had a— Save it. I've got a business to run, not a charity." He handed her an apron. "Table 7 needs water refills and 9 just sat down." Nora swallowed her pride and got to work. Between orders, she practiced scales under her breath, reviewing the set list for tonight's performance. The Blue Note's owner had emphasized the importance of tonight's wealthy audience. "People who could change your life with one business card," he'd said. By evening, Nora stood backstage at the club, smoothing the one formal dress she owned, a midnight blue vintage number found at a thrift store. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory. "Your voice is a gift, Nora. It'll carry you places your feet never could." As the club filled with tuxedos and evening gowns, Nora peeked through the curtain. Tables of Manhattan's elite sipped champagne, their combined net worth probably exceeding the GDP of small nations. "You ready?" asked Julian, the pianist and her closest friend. Nora took a deep breath. "Always ready to sing. It's real life I struggle with." "Well, tonight just sing. Tomorrow you can worry about real life." Meanwhile, Harrison arrived at the Blue Note, immediately regretting his decision. He nodded curtly at acquaintances while avoiding conversation, checking his watch repeatedly. 2 hours, that was all he'd promised. Then the lights dimmed, and a woman stepped onto the small stage. "Good evening," she said simply. "My name is Nora Winters." And then she began to sing, a haunting rendition of stormy weather that silenced the room. Harrison's hand froze midway to his whiskey glass, his attention captured not just by her technical skill, but by the raw, emotional authenticity in her voice. For the first time in years, something within him stirred, an uncomfortable recognition of feelings he'd long buried beneath spreadsheets and acquisitions. For the duration of that first song, Harrison Blackwood forgot to check his watch. Unexpected harmonies. 3 weeks after the charity gala, Harrison found himself doing something entirely out of character, sitting alone at a corner table of the Blue Note on a Tuesday night, nursing a single malt scotch. He'd told himself the first return visit was merely to confirm his unusual reaction had been a fluke, perhaps triggered by fatigue or the anniversary of his father's passing. By the third visit, he'd stopped making excuses. "Back again, Mr. Blackwood?" The hostess recognized him now, always seating him at the same secluded table with a clear view of the stage. Harrison merely nodded, his attention already fixed on the small stage where Nora was adjusting the microphone stand. Tonight she wore a simple black dress, her auburn hair falling in loose waves around her shoulders. When she sang, everything from jazz standards to reimagined contemporary pieces, Harrison observed how she transformed. The woman who seemed almost apologetic between songs became someone entirely different, someone unafraid to lay bare every emotion. "This next one is for the dreamers," Nora announced to the half-filled club. "For anyone who's ever had to choose between what they love and what pays the bills." The irony wasn't lost on Harrison. His entire empire was built on making exactly the opposite choice, sacrificing passion for profit, sentiment for success. After the show, as patrons filtered out, Harrison lingered. He'd never approached her, never introduced himself. Something kept him at a distance, content to observe this woman whose voice seemed to excavate feelings he'd thought long buried. "Can I get you anything else, sir?" the server asked. "Information," Harrison replied, his voice low. "About Ms. Winters." The server looked uncomfortable. "I don't think—" Harrison slid over his business card along with several $100 bills. "I'm not interested in anything inappropriate. Just her situation." 15 minutes later, Harrison knew the outline of Nora's life, raising her younger brother alone, working double shifts, struggling with her grandmother's medical debts while trying to keep their modest apartment. He also learned about Theo's exceptional grades and interest in science, currently hindered by the tuition costs of a better school. The next morning, Harrison called his foundation's director. "Establish a new scholarship program," he instructed. "Full academic scholarships for science students at Westbrook Academy. Make it anonymous, immediate implementation." "Sir, these things usually take months of—" "I'm not interested in usual," Harrison interrupted. "Have the preliminary candidates ready by tomorrow." 2 weeks later, Nora stared at the official letter in disbelief. "I don't understand," she whispered to Theo, who was bouncing on his toes with excitement. "You didn't even apply for this scholarship, Ms. Winters." The Westbrook Academy administrator had explained over the phone. "Your brother was recommended by his current science teacher. His grades and project work were evaluated, and he's exactly the type of promising student our new anonymous donor wants to support." That evening at the Blue Note, Nora's performance held a new energy, a lightness Harrison hadn't witnessed before. Between sets, he overheard her telling Julian about the Miracle Scholarship, while his chest tightened with an unfamiliar sensation. Was this satisfaction? Not from closing a deal or crushing a competitor, but from seeing genuine joy on someone else's face. As weeks passed, Harrison's routine adjusted around Nora's performance schedule. His executive team was baffled by his sudden insistence on leaving the office by 7 on certain evenings. Olivia, ever observant, noted the change without comment, simply rearranging his calendar accordingly. On a rainy Thursday, Harrison arrived at the Blue Note to find Nora absent, a substitute singer in her place. "Ms. Winters had a family emergency," the hostess explained, noting his frown. "Her brother was admitted to the hospital this afternoon." Harrison left immediately, making calls from his car. By midnight, he'd arranged for the city's top pediatric specialist to examine Theo's case of severe pneumonia, ensuring a private room and the best care possible, all anonymously handled through his foundation. 3 days later, Nora returned to the Blue Note, visibly exhausted but relieved. "Thank you all for your kind thoughts," she addressed the audience. My brother is recovering well thanks to some incredibly generous care from the hospital. Tonight's first song is a thank you to whoever our guardian angel might be. As she sang Bridge Over Troubled Water, her eyes swept across the room, briefly meeting Harrison's. For a moment, he felt exposed, as if she could somehow see through his carefully constructed facade to the man beneath. The man even he had almost forgotten existed. When the set ended, Harrison did something unprecedented. He remained at his table waiting. When Nora emerged from backstage, he gestured to the empty chair across from him. "Your performance was exceptional," he said as she hesitantly approached. "I'm Harrison Blackwood." "I know who you are," she replied, surprising him. "You've been here every Tuesday and Thursday for weeks. The staff talks." Harrison found himself momentarily speechless, a condition foreign to a man whose words typically moved markets. "Will you join me?" he finally asked, indicating the chair again. Nora studied him, her artist's eyes assessing. "Why?" It was the question Harrison had been asking himself for weeks, and still had no suitable answer for. "Because," he said finally, "I'd like to hear about the woman behind the voice." Nora smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes, and sat down. "That's funny. I was wondering about the man behind the perfectly tailored suits who keeps hiding in the corner of my club." "Your club?" "Well, it feels like mine when I'm singing. For the first time in years." Harrison Blackwood smiled back, not the calculated expression he used in negotiations, but something real and rusty from disuse. "Tell me about your brother," he said. And for the next hour, Harrison Blackwood, the man known for cutting meetings short and people shorter, did something utterly foreign to him. He listened. "Crescendo of complications, I still don't understand why we're meeting here instead of your office," Nora said, looking around the elegant but empty restaurant Harrison had reserved entirely for their lunch, "because my office has glass walls and 100 employees with nothing better to do than speculate." "About my personal life," Harrison replied, watching her study the menu with barely concealed concern over the prices. "Order whatever you want," he added. "This discussion is technically business." Over the past month, their relationship had evolved from occasional post-performance conversations to regular meetings that Harrison insisted on calling consultations. He'd approached Nora with a proposition, helping his foundation identify authentic arts programs worthy of support. The generous consultation fee he offered had initially made her suspicious, but the opportunity to advocate for struggling artists while easing her financial burden proved too compelling to refuse. "The youth program at Riverside Community Center deserves funding," Nora said, pushing a folder across the table. "They're doing incredible work with kids who have nowhere else to go after school." Harrison opened the file, impressed by her thorough research. "You should consider a career in philanthropy." "I'll stick with music," she replied, then hesitated. "Though having steady income these past weeks has been transformative. Theo's thriving at his new school, and I actually paid all our bills on time." It's a novel experience. Something tightened in Harrison's chest. Pride, perhaps, or satisfaction. He'd come to respect Nora's fierce independence, her refusal to complain about circumstances that would break most people. "Speaking of Theo," Harrison said carefully, "I'd like to meet him sometime." The request surprised them both. Their relationship existed in a carefully maintained, neutral territory, not quite professional, not quite personal. Harrison had revealed little about himself beyond broad strokes of his career, while Nora shared stories of her life with surprising openness. Yet neither had acknowledged the growing connection between them. The way their meetings stretched longer each time, how conversation flowed with unexpected ease. "He has a science fair next Friday," Nora offered. "He'd probably love to explain his project to someone who understands finance and business implications better than I do." Before Harrison could respond, his phone buzzed with a priority alert. The message made him tense visibly. "Problem?" Nora asked. "Westridge Pharmaceuticals is attempting a hostile takeover of one of my investments." He stood abruptly. "I need to go." What Harrison didn't say was that Westridge was owned by Richard Winters. No relation to Nora, But the man whose betrayal 8 years ago had cost Harrison both his fiancée and nearly his company. The same man who had taught Harrison the dangerous lesson that sentiment had no place in business or life. For the next week, Harrison disappeared into the ruthless persona that had built his empire. Board meetings ran past midnight. Strategies were formulated, allies cultivated, enemies threatened. He canceled his standing reservation at the Blue Note without explanation and missed Theo's science fair entirely. When he finally emerged victorious, having not only thwarted Westridge's takeover attempt but orchestrated a counter-acquisition that would dismantle the company entirely, he found 17 missed messages from Nora, progressing from understanding to concerned to hurt. The final one read simply, "I guess I misunderstood what was happening between us. Good luck with everything, Harrison." That night, Harrison stood outside the Blue Note in a rare Manhattan snowfall, watching through the window as Nora performed. Her usual emotional transparency had been replaced by a guarded precision. Even from a distance, he could see the walls she'd erected, walls he recognized all too well. Mr. Blackwood. Julian, the pianist, had spotted him while stepping outside for a break. "She's hurting, you know." "I had business matters." "Save it," Julian interrupted with surprising boldness. "I've known Nora for years. She doesn't let people in easily, not since everyone she's loved has either died or abandoned her." He blew warm air into his cupped hands. "She told me about the scholarship program for Theo. Pretty coincidental timing, wasn't it? Right after you started coming here." Harrison's silence confirmed Julian's suspicions. "That's what I thought," Julian continued. "Look, I don't know what game you're playing, but Nora isn't a charity case or some pet project for a bored billionaire. She's the real deal, as a musician and as a person." "I know exactly who she is," Harrison replied coldly. "Then why the secret benefactor routine? Why not just be straight with her?" The question hit with unexpected force. Why indeed? Was it the power imbalance, fear of rejection, or something deeper? The possibility that without his wealth and influence, he had nothing of value to offer someone like Nora. Julian checked his watch. "I've got to get back. Final set starting." He paused, then added more gently, "She mentioned once that you actually listen when she talks. Do you know how rare that is for someone like her? People hear her sing, but they don't listen to her." As Julian disappeared back inside, Harrison remained in the gently falling snow. A man accustomed to making million-dollar decisions in seconds, now paralyzed by the much greater risk of genuine human connection. Inside, Nora began to sing Both Sides Now, her voice carrying faintly through the glass. Harrison closed his eyes, suddenly understanding the choice of song was no coincidence. The next morning, Olivia entered Harrison's office to find him uncharacteristically disheveled, surrounded by financial reports on Westridge Pharmaceuticals. "Sir, the board is waiting." Harrison looked up, his expression resolute. "Cancel the Westridge acquisition." "What?" "But we've spent weeks. Sometimes victory isn't worth the cost," he said quietly. "Prepare a different proposal. We'll take their viable divisions, preserve the jobs, but Richard keeps his company." He stood, straightening his tie. "And Olivia? Clear my schedule for Friday afternoon. I have a science fair project to see." Dissonant truths. The university auditorium buzzed with excitement as regional high school science fair finalists presented their projects. Among them, Theo Winters stood proudly beside his display on sustainable urban water filtration systems, a project that had advanced from his school fair to the citywide competition in just 3 months. Nora spotted Harrison the moment he entered the hall, his tall figure conspicuous in a tailored suit among parents in casual attire. Their eyes met across the room, and the complex mix of emotions that passed between them could have filled one of her songs with verses. "You came," she said when he approached, her voice carefully neutral. "I apologize for my absence these past weeks," Harrison replied formally. "I had matters that required my full attention." 3 weeks, Harrison. Not even a text. Before he could respond, Theo noticed him. "Mr. Blackwood, you made it! Come see my project. I incorporated those financial projections you suggested in your email." Nora's expression shifted from guarded to confused. Email? Harrison winced internally. In his correspondence with Theo about his project, initially through the scholarship program, then directly, he had never mentioned that Nora remained unaware of his involvement. Perhaps we should discuss this later, Harrison suggested quietly. No, Nora replied firmly. I think now is perfect. Theo, how long have you been emailing with Mr. Blackwood? The boy looked between them, suddenly sensing tension. Since the scholarship? He's been helping with the business aspects of my project. Is that not okay? The pieces aligned in Nora's mind with devastating clarity, the mysterious scholarship, the specialist during Theo's hospitalization, the two perfectly timed consultation job. I need some air, she said abruptly, turning toward the exit. Harrison followed her into the empty corridor. Nora, please let me explain. Explain what? That you've been manipulating my life? Playing benefactor behind my back? Her voice trembled. Was any of it real, Harrison? Or was I just an interesting project for you, the struggling artist you could save without actually having to risk anything? That's not fair, he said, his own composure slipping. I was trying to help. Help doesn't come with deception. Help isn't secretly arranging my life like I'm a character in your personal narrative. I didn't know how else to what? To connect with someone? You build walls around yourself that would make fortress architects jealous, then wonder why genuine relationships are difficult. Nora wiped angrily at the moisture in her eyes. You know what hurts most? I thought we were becoming friends, maybe even more. But real connections require trust and honesty. Like you've been completely honest? Harrison countered, his defensive instincts flaring. You never mentioned applying to the Juilliard Masters program? Nora paled. How did you— I didn't arrange that, if that's what you're thinking, he said quickly. Julian mentioned it. It was a long shot. I probably won't even get in, but you want to. Nora sighed. Of course I do. It's been my dream since I was 17. But dreams don't pay rent or raise 12-year-old boys. Harrison ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of frustration. This is precisely why I helped anonymously. You're so fiercely independent that you reject opportunities that might actually allow you to pursue your talents. That's not your decision to make, she exclaimed. You don't get to decide what's best for me or Theo without our input. I make decisions that impact thousands of lives every day, Harrison said, his voice hardening. And that's the problem. You've forgotten the difference between business and personal relationships. People aren't corporations to be acquired or restructured according to your vision. The truth in her words struck deeper than Harrison wanted to admit. His phone buzzed, another crisis at the office, but for once he ignored it. You're right, he said quietly. I've spent so many years making unilateral decisions that I've forgotten how to collaborate, how to ask rather than direct, how to be vulnerable rather than strategic. He took a breath. But Nora, my feelings for you are genuine. Unexpected and inconvenient, but real. Nora studied his face, searching for the truth. I need time, Harrison, and space. What you did came from good intentions, but it created a foundation built on deception. I understand, he replied, though the prospect of her absence already created an uncomfortable hollow in his chest. But before I go, there's something you should know. I've been carrying my own deception, not just from you, but from myself. He explained about Richard Winters and the history that had hardened him, about nearly destroying a man's company out of lingering resentment, and how thoughts of her had ultimately led him to choose a different path. I've spent 8 years believing that emotions are liabilities, Harrison concluded. Then I heard you sing, and everything I thought I knew about strength and weakness came into question. Nora's expression softened slightly. We're quite a pair, aren't we? Both so afraid of being hurt that we've built different kinds of cages around ourselves. The difference is, Harrison said, your music gives you a way to express what's inside those walls. I've just been frozen. From the auditorium, they heard announcements beginning for the awards ceremony. Nora gestured toward the door. We should go back. Theo's expecting us? Us, Harrison asked. Yes, she said simply. Whatever happens between you and me, you've been important to him. I won't take that away. As they returned to the auditorium, Theo waved excitedly, pointing to his project where judges were gathered. Nora glanced at Harrison. "This conversation isn't finished." "I'd be disappointed if it was," he replied, and for the first time that day, a hint of a smile touched her lips. Perfect cadence. The envelope from Juilliard sat unopened on Nora's kitchen table for 3 days. Every time she passed it, her stomach knotted with a mixture of hope and dread. "Just open it already," Theo urged, eating breakfast before school. "The suspense is worse than finding out." "Easy for you to say," Nora replied, stirring her coffee. "Your acceptance to the Advanced Science Summer Program came in a thick packet with a scholarship offer." "Which I got because my project was actually good," Theo said firmly. "Just like you'll get in because you're actually good." The past 2 months had brought significant changes to the Winters siblings. Following their confrontation at the science fair, Nora had established clear boundaries with Harrison. No more secret assistance, no more consultation work that felt suspiciously like charity. If they were to have any relationship, professional or personal, it would be built on transparency and mutual respect. To her surprise, Harrison had not only accepted these terms, but embraced them. He'd revealed vulnerabilities she never expected, sharing stories of his father's impossible expectations, his mother's early death, the betrayal that had calcified his heart. In return, Nora gradually lowered her own defenses, admitting how exhausting it was to always be strong, to never need help, to carry everyone's burdens alone. Their relationship evolved cautiously, deliberately. Harrison attended her performances openly now, no longer hiding in corners. Nora occasionally visited his office, finding unexpected humor in the stunned expressions of employees who had never seen their intimidating boss smile genuinely. They were building something neither had experienced before, a connection based not on dependence or advantage, but on choice and appreciation. The doorbell rang, interrupting her thoughts. "That's probably Julian," Nora called to Theo. "He's walking you to school today while I—" But when she opened the door, Harrison stood there instead. "You're not Julian," she said unnecessarily. "Brilliant observation," Harrison replied, the dry humor he rarely showed others now a regular feature in their conversations. Julian called. "His car broke down, so I offered to fill in." He noticed the envelope on the table. "Is that—" "Don't," Nora warned. "I'm not ready yet." Harrison nodded, respecting her process. "Whenever you are. No pressure." After dropping Theo at school, they walked through the neighborhood park, a routine they'd established on the mornings Harrison came to Brooklyn. "My board approved the Community Arts Initiative yesterday," Harrison said. "Full funding for 3 years, with emphasis on programs serving underprivileged youth." "That's wonderful," Nora replied, genuinely pleased. The initiative had been her brainchild, but Harrison had championed it through his foundation with no interference. "Those programs will change lives." "They already have," he said quietly. "Mine specifically." Nora stopped walking, turning to face him. "How so?" 6 months ago, I measured success by acquisitions and profit margins. Now I'm proudest of the things that won't ever appear on a balance sheet." He took her hand, a gesture that still sent a current of warmth through her. "You've changed everything, Nora." "We've changed each other," she corrected gently. "You've shown me it's possible to accept help without losing independence, to trust again after being hurt." "I've been thinking about trust," Harrison said, his expression turning serious. "And about futures, specifically yours." Nora tensed slightly. "Harrison, if this is about Juilliard, it's about more than that," he interrupted. "It's about what happens when you open that envelope, regardless of what it says." "What do you mean?" Harrison guided her to a bench beneath a flowering cherry tree. "If you're accepted, you'll need to make difficult decisions about Theo, about finances, about your performing schedule. And if I'm rejected, I'll need to reimagine my future," she finished. "Either way," Harrison said carefully, "I want to be part of that future. Not as a benefactor or a solution to practical problems, but as a partner, someone who stands beside you rather than clearing the path ahead." Nora studied his face, the features that had once seemed so forbidding now familiar and dear. "Are you proposing something specific, Harrison Blackwood?" "I'm proposing everything," he said simply. "A life together. A family that includes Theo. A partnership where your dreams are as important as mine. Where we support each other not out of obligation, but out of love." The word hung between them, finally spoken after months of careful approach. "Love," Nora repeated softly. "Is that what this is?" "It's the only explanation that makes sense," Harrison replied. "I've analyzed every other possibility and none account for the evidence." Nora laughed, the full, uninhibited sound that had become his favorite melody. "Only you would approach love like a business problem." "Old habits," he admitted with a small smile. "But I'm learning new ones." She touched his face gently. "I love you too, you know, despite your terrible communication skills and control issues." "And I love you, despite your stubborn independence and inability to accept compliments," he countered, leaning closer. Their kiss was interrupted by the ping of Nora's phone, a message from Theo. "Open the envelope!" Back at the apartment, they stood together before the table, where the Juilliard letter waited. Nora took a deep breath and tore it open, scanning the contents as Harrison watched her face. "I got in," she whispered, then louder. "I got in." Harrison enfolded her in an embrace as she laughed and cried simultaneously. "Of course you did," he murmured into her hair. "Your voice could never be denied." Later that evening, as they celebrated with Theo over dinner at their favorite local restaurant, nothing fancy at Nora's insistence, Harrison raised his glass in a toast. "To new beginnings," he said, his eyes never leaving Nora's, "and to the voice that thawed a frozen heart." "Gross," Theo commented, but he was smiling as he clinked his soda glass against theirs. Outside the restaurant window, Brooklyn continued its everyday rhythm, people hurrying past, lives intersecting briefly before continuing on separate paths. But inside, three people who had each known profound loss were creating something new together, their individual melodies blending into a harmony none had believed possible. For Harrison Blackwood, who had built an empire on the principle that vulnerability was weakness, the greatest victory of his life came in surrender, to love, to trust, to the transformative power of a voice that sang not just notes, but truth. And for Nora Winters, who had spent years carrying the world alone, the most precious gift wasn't financial security or professional opportunity, but the chance to share her burdens and her joys with someone who truly heard her, not just her music, but her heart. Their story wasn't about a tycoon's redemption or a singer's rescue. It was simpler and more profound. Two damaged people finding wholeness together, creating a love song neither could have written alone.